and we are grateful for the opportunity to discuss Shastra and Srila Prabhupada's writings with you. Today, we are planning to cover one more book in a selection of Srila Prabhupada's little gems that we have, and that would be Bhakti-Yoga, The Art of Eternal Love. So before we get started, let's begin with some prayers. All our presentations on Bhakti start with first gratitude towards those who have guided us and brought us to this place, our Guru and our Acharyas and the Parampara from which we come. So let's start with Mangalacharan, right? Okay, let's go. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. We will start with one Jai Radha Madhav to finish the kirtan and then go on to the lecture. Just a second. Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Jayo Gopijana Vallabha Jayo Girivaradhari Jayo Girivaradhari Jayo Gopijana Vallabha Jayo Girivaradhari Jayo Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravana Chari Yamuna Tiravana Chari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Jayo Gopijana Vallabha Jayo Girivaradhari Jayo Girivaradhari, Jayo Radha Madhava, Jayo Kunja Vihari, Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jayo Radha Madhava, Jayo Kunja Vihari, Jayo Radha Madhava, Jayo Kunja Vihari, Jayo Gopijana Vallabha, Jayo Girivaradhari, Jayo Girivaradhari, Jayo Radha Madhava, Jayo Kunja Vihari. Hi Krishna, and welcome to this class, Sunday Feast class. And today we'll be covering this book. Let me show this to you. This is Bhakti-Yoga, The Art of Eternal Love. I was thinking a lot about this concept of love and this idea of, of how much love affects us in the material world. It's such an important and integral part of our lives. And I noticed that May came up and we have Mother's Day, and then we have Father's Day, and then we have the Vyas Puja for Guru Maharajas, and we finished Valentine's Day in February. And I was thinking so much that so many types of affection that we share and spread in the world. And what could be the book that connects it all? And I found this wonderful little gem that Prabhupada had written. There's not one question that we have in our hearts or in our minds that Prabhupada has not already thought of and given an answer to. But it's our basic level of ignorance and unwillingness that we're unable to find them, and focus and read them at the right time. One advantage with doing these small little books that Prabhupada has written is that we get an opportunity to read them along with you and revisit the beauty that is Srila Prabhupada, because Srila Prabhupada is known for making difficult things very, very easy. He simplifies heavy concepts, brings it down to the level of my mind, a simple beginner mind, and makes it easy for me to understand something that otherwise would be a 500-page book. This book is especially thin. I've noticed it's not very long. It's got only about 40 pages. And each section or chapter in this book is also very small and tight. But the information, as always, is extraordinarily well fitted in. So this is one of Prabhupada's many gems, the Bhakti-Yoga, Art of Eternal Love. And this was taken from his introduction and first chapter to the book that he has written, Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, translations, and from his transcripts of lectures that he had given in Calcutta, Mumbai, and Vrindavan. So let's start with the first concept that we're approaching here with this book. And it's a universal concept. It talks about eternal love. Eternal love is a topic that's been used even in like movies and dramas and stuff like that. And it brings us back to the first initial concept of what is love. So thinking about it, I was wondering, I liked how Prabhupada introduces love to us in the book. In the introduction, he explains, love is one of those words that we use most often and understand the least. That's an amazing concept if we stop to think about it. In the world that we live in, we are flooded with all kinds of ideas about love. We don't really have to stop and think. It's all around us on billboards, on advertisements, on the food we buy, the items we pick up. There are songs that are sung, stories that are written. There's a whole industry that runs based on this very simple idea of love and expressing love. Falling in love, being in love, betrayed in love, lost love, and finding love again. It's all covered. There's nothing they've left out. Have you noticed how There are so many days on our calendar that we use to express our love for all the people we are connected to. We have birthdays, we have anniversaries, we have Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Grandparents' Day. We have family celebrations like Thanksgiving and Christmas and other all around the year. We're looking for different ways to celebrate and encourage this very special need of ours, this need for love. So let's look at the definition of love before we go into what Srila Prabhupada's going to tell us. When you look in the dictionary, love is defined as an intense feeling of deep affection. An intense feeling of deep affection. Love is therefore an emotion, a visceral emotion. So if it's an emotion, why is that emotion so very important to us? When we look at the concept of love, we start to understand this a little better. Love for all humans, all beings, is a fundamental need. We were born to love and be loved. More than the other basic needs of food, shelter, clothing, our very deep emotional need is to be loved. From the time we were babies till the time we die, our life is enriched by the relationships that we keep and the people we meet and interact with. Our relationships are defined by the type of love that we have for each other. Why else is love very important to us? Love is very important to us because love gives us a purpose in life. It gives us an action, gives us service. Srila Prabhupada talks about it, and he says, from birth till death, we live and struggle to keep our love for our parents, our siblings, our spouse and children, friends and nation. We are serving in so many capacities to love so many people. Think about it. If we think about the people we interact in our life, we have one way of seeing what are the types of love out there, and that is by seeing whom do we love. If you think about your own life, you will come up with a lot of different people who are in it. And with each different person, your approach is different. We have the love of a parent towards a child, a very selfless, giving love. Then we have the love of friends and comrades, a very give and take, emotionally supportive, sustaining love. Then there's a love between couples, a man and a woman, a husband and a wife, where there's a lot of emotional support, a lot of physical togetherness. Another way to look at love would be to compare different types of love on the basis of time. How long does love last? Sometimes our affections are fleeting, they're short, they don't last very long, and we switch out. And sometimes we are blessed with a love that is long and deep. We are always looking for that kind of love. We're looking for love of the lasting kind. But Srila Prabhupada reminds us that we are spiritual beings in a material world. And even though we are eternal, and the love we want is of the eternal kind, because we are wrapped in these bodies and living in a material world that is temporary, one thing is very sure, says Srila Prabhupada. In the material world, all love is temporary. Love between bodies is bound to be temporary because the lovers' bodies are temporary. But we are not these bodies. We are eternal souls. And notice how the love in this material world is defined by love between similar beings. We are jivas, we are eternal souls, and we love those around us who are the same as us. And between each other, we try to maintain a love that only sustains with the body that we create. And knowing fully well that this body is created, survives for a period of time, reproduces, and is finally destroyed, we realize that this love that we are investing so much energy and time into will also be destroyed at some point in time. And that goes against the grain of who we are, because we are Sat, Chit, and Ananda, full of happiness, bliss, and we are eternal. And we don't like things that are temporary, just doesn't fix well with us. So when you notice that these are our needs, how can we have a love that will last us forever? A love that will last us forever, Srila Prabhupada says, is a special kind of love. The love between an individual soul and the Supreme consciousness. Actually, every other love that we experience in our lives are just reflections of this original loving exchange between the individual soul and the Supreme Soul. This special love is called in Sanskrit Bhakti. Love also brings us, with the memory of love, it brings us a memory of a place, a bridge that we crossed, a cool summer breeze, at a park that we were sitting at, our parental home. Love connects to places. Material love and spiritual love are both like that. They connect to locations. Material love would be locations that we've been in, but spiritual love also has a place. Spiritual love is experienced in a place that is the spiritual realm, in a land that is called Vrindavan. So when we want to experience that kind of love, we also have another question. How do we get there? So we have these two things. How do we find this special kind of love? And how do we get to the spiritual world to relish it? To answer this question comes the process of awakening of love, that special love, that eternal love that is the need of every soul. That process is called Bhakti-Yoga. Bhakti. Bhakti involves three things. Bhakti involves first the lover, then the beloved, and then their loving relationship. In Bhakti, all these three things, says Srila Prabhupada, are eternal. The lover, the individual soul, is eternal. The beloved of that soul, the Supreme Lord, is also eternal. And the loving relationship that they share, Bhakti, is also eternal. Therefore, Bhakti Yoga is devotional service. Now, what are you saying, devotional service? Bhakti is love, the process of love. Is it devotional? So the question comes down, why is it service? Do I have to work for love? Everyone is doing service, says Srila Prabhupada. Let's see what he has to say. He says, every service has some attractive feature that drives the servitor progressively on and on. Every one of us within this world is perpetually engaged in some sort of service, and the impetus for such service is the pleasure we derive from it. Driven by affection for his wife and children, a family man works day and night. A philanthropist works in the same way for love of a greater family. The nationalist does it for his country, his cause, his countrymen. The force that drives the philanthropist, the householder, and the nationalist, all of them are driven by a specific force called rasa. Rasa is a kind of a mellow relationship whose taste is very sweet. When you see someone you love and you're thinking of them, you feel it in your heart. It moves you. That is because love triggers a rasa, a feeling. Rasa is a kind of mellow that a relationship creates. Different types of love trigger different types of rasas. There is spiritual rasa and there is a mundane rasa, the rasa of the material world. Srila Prabhupada explains to us that the relish or taste of the mundane rasa is different from the one that we get from the spiritual rasa. Why is it different? He says it's different because the mundane rasa, the feelings that we receive in the material world, they do not endure. Let's look at this a little more. Let's go to the online version of the book and look at what is bhakti. Let's read from that and see if we can find out more on this topic. Kirita, could you open that? Okay, so here we are. Bhakti means devotional service. Every service has some attractive feature that drives the servitor progressively on. We've covered that. We got to the point where Bhakti rasa is a mellow different from the ordinary rasa. Mundane workers labor hard day and night in order to relish a certain kind of rasa, and this is sense gratification. The taste, the relish of the rasa does not long endure, and therefore they will change their position of enjoyment. A businessman is not satisfied by the work that he does over the week. Therefore, wanting a change for the weekend, he goes to another place to try to forget his business activities. Then, after the weekend is spent in forgetfulness, he again changes his position and resumes his business. Material engagement means accepting a particular status for some time and then changing it. This position of changing back and forth is technically called bhoga tyaga, which means a position of altering sense enjoyment and renunciation. A living entity cannot steadily remain either in sense enjoyment or in renunciation. Change is going on perpetually, and we cannot be happy in either state because of our eternal constitutional position. Sense gratification does not endure for long. Therefore, it is called chapala sukha, or flickering happiness. He gives a very nice example. An ordinary family man who works very hard day and night is successful in giving comforts to the members of his family and thereby relishes a kind of mellow. But his whole advancement of material happiness immediately terminates along with his body as soon as his life is over. Death is therefore taken as the representative of God for the atheistic class of men. The devotee realizes the presence of God by devotional service, whereas the atheist realizes the presence of God in the shape of death. At death, everything is finished, and one has to begin a new chapter of life in a new situation, perhaps higher or lower than the last one. Could you scroll forward, please? So here he's explaining that bhakti rasa, this flavor, this mellow that we get, is very different from these rasas that we get in the real world, in the material world. Bhakti rasa, however, the mellow relished in transcendental loving service of the Lord, does not finish with the end of life. It continues perpetually and is therefore called Amrita, that which does not die, but exists eternally. This is confirmed in all Vedic literatures. The Bhagavad Gita says, a little advancement in Bhakti Rasa can save the devotee from the greatest danger, that of missing the opportunity to be a human being in the next life. The rasa derived from our feelings in social life, in family life, or in greater family life of altruism, philanthropy, nationalism, socialism, communism, does not guarantee that one's next life will be a human being. We prepare for our next life in the present body. We prepare for our next life by our actual activities in the present life. A living entity is offered a particular type of body as a result of his actions in the present body. And Prabhupada goes on to explain that it's done through the authority of God, Daivanetrena. He explains that this Daivanetrena supervises what you get in your next life. And Krishna consciousness guarantees that you will get another human life. Why would you want to give that up, is his thought. So let me go back to what I was covering. There he speaks about what is bhakti and why is it that bhakti is so important. One, let's recap this. Let's go back and recap it so we can cover all the points that we've been able to cover so far. Point one, and we have no doubt about this. We all want love. We want a love that will last. And we want to serve with love. These are the three things that are always top priority for us. We want to taste the rasa of love, the mellow that comes from service, those we love. But this material world offers us only temporary solutions. One, love in the material world dies with the body because it's connected to the body. Two, sense gratification only provides us a temporary comfort, a temporary sukha. It's a chapala sukha. And because of that, we don't feel sated or gratified. Spiritual rasa is the only rasa that lasts. And that rasa is the mellow that we achieve when we have an interaction or affection between the individual soul and the Supreme Lord. This process of trying to relearn what we always have, this deep attachment and loving service attitude towards the Lord, is called Bhakti-Yoga, this process. This is what we've covered so far. And this is the basic introduction to Bhakti-Yoga, the art of eternal love. If we look at the breakup of Bhakti, the art of eternal love, Prabhupada's book breaks down into 9 different chapters. We did the introduction. The second chapter Prabhupada covers is what is the Nectar of Devotion. He talks about the book that was written by Rupa Goswami, and he explains why it was written, what was the purpose. He goes on further to talk about bhakti. He breaks it down into telling us what are the benefits of bhakti and what is the nature of the love that we want to offer the Lord. It's boundless, it's eternal. What kind of love is that? And then he defines pure devotional service. Having defined the process, he tells us, how do we do it? How do we act in Krishna consciousness? What is the essence of bhakti? Then he defines a person who's been doing this so long and so well that he becomes a pure devotee. And he wraps it up by talking about the 6 features of pure bhakti. What are the qualities of that kind of love, that kind of mellow? So let's see what we have next. So let's continue. The basic principle of the living condition is that we have a general propensity to love someone. That's what we've covered in the first part. No one can live without loving someone else. This propensity is present in every living being. Even an animal like a tiger has this loving propensity, at least in a dormant state, and it is certainly present in us humans. The missing point, however, says Srila Prabhupada, is where do we put our love? Where do we repose our love so that everyone can become happy? At the present moment, the human society teaches one to love his country, his family, or his personal self. But there is no information as to where to put this loving propensity so that everybody can be happy. There is such a place where if we put our love and we do our service, it would make everybody happy. It just doesn't have to be just me, my family, my country, my fellow men. It doesn't have to be defined by boundaries. And that missing place is Krishna. The Nectar of Devotion teaches us how we can stimulate our original love for Krishna and how to be situated in that kind of a position where we can enjoy that blissful life. The Nectar of Devotion is a summary study of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It was written in Sanskrit by Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada. He was the chief of the 6 Goswamis. They were direct disciples of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The present Krishna conscious movement is also based on the authority of Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada. We are therefore generally known as Rupanugas, followers in the footsteps of Srila Rupa Goswami. It is only for our guidance that Srila Rupa Goswami prepared this book. It was meant to teach us how to get ourselves from this place of limited, restricted, temporary love to the love that we so dearly need and are waiting for. I have a moot point that I want to mention and cover before we go ahead and talk about this wonderful love that we can find. A lot of times we have a question when we say, okay, so everything here in the material world is temporary, and if I invest my love here in these different things, it won't last and it won't fully satisfy me. So what do I do? Do I not love my family? Do I give up on all these other types of love that I have in the material world and just focus with one-pointed attention on loving God? Well, I read an article from the Grihastha Vision team of ISKCON. Explains this point very nicely, and I wanted to share. Because a lot of times when you talk about love and say, well, all this love is not the right one, what you really need is your love for God, we don't quite examine the overall position here. If we carefully examine people everywhere, we will find that everyone needs emotional support. We are living sentient beings, and the desire for affiliation, for friendship, for affection, and for appreciation are very natural spiritual desires. We have these needs because Krishna, the original person from whom all living characteristics come, exhibits these qualities himself. Here, Srila Prabhupada gives a very important insight for families who practice Krishna consciousness. To cut off the tie of all other affections does not mean completely negating the finer elements. That is not possible. A living being, whoever he may be, must have this feeling of affection for others because affection is a symptom of life. Affection is a need of the spirit soul, declares Srila Prabhupada in Srimad Bhagavatam 1:8-45. A stable emotional background in which all family or community members feel wanted and appreciated is essential for the personal and spiritual growth of adults and children. Sometimes devotees in a neophyte state misunderstand this meaning of detachment and attachment. And we wrongly conclude that, showing affection is just material and it's not necessary. Warm, loving interactions with other bodies may be taken as unnecessary or even an impediment to spiritual growth. And this is a great misunderstanding. When we recognize that all things and all living beings in general belong to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we will see that we have nothing to renounce and nothing to be detached from, because everything belongs to Krishna. It's the way we view the world we live in. If I would be taking care of my family and my home and the things I own with the sense of it belongs to me, then that will not give me any deep, long-lasting satisfaction. But when I do it with the sense and understanding that everything belongs to Krishna, everything comes from him, and I'm taking care of all this as a service to him, then the whole approach changes. There's no need to put things away or avoid or negate or separate from your service. It's all your service. When we recognize that all things, all people, and all living beings in general belong to Supreme Personality of Godhead, we will see that we have nothing to renounce and nothing to detach from, because it all belongs to Krishna. Then we will aspire to use everything in his service and treat everyone with love and care. Srila Prabhupada exemplified this understanding in all of his interactions with everyone. Whether famous or not, whether a dignitary or a child, he treated everyone with sincere, heartfelt caring. Who could be a better example than our Acharya Srila Prabhupada? So when we say we're looking for love in all the wrong places, and where we should be looking for love is in that eternal zone, which is our permanent nature, our real nature, we don't mean to say that everything around you is unnecessary or unwanted. We're trying to say that when you create that connection, that is the most satisfying, that is the most enriching. And through that connection, we will be able to better understand and interact with those around us, because we will be watering the root of the plant. So having covered that, let's go on with the book and see where Prabhupada is going. Prabhupada talks about this. He goes to the next step. So now we know where we need to invest our love. And we're very excited. We say, okay, well, I want to invest my love in Supreme Lord. The first thing a neophyte devotee would feel is, I want to see Krishna. He gets really anxious to see the Lord. But the Lord cannot be seen or known by our present, materially blunt senses, says Srila Prabhupada. The process of devotional service, as it is recommended in the Nectar of Devotion, will gradually elevate us from the material condition of life to a spiritual status. In the process of following this method that is explained in the Nectar of Devotion, we will start cleansing ourselves. We will be purifying our senses. When our senses get purified, that is when one will become situated in Bhakti Rasa life. And any action that is performed for the satisfaction of Krishna in this transcendental Bhakti Rasa then will be relished perpetually. So to be able to relish the taste of that service, we first have to clean ourselves. When one is engaged in devotional service, all varieties of rasa turn into eternity. In the beginning, one is trained according to the principles of regulation under the guidance of an acharya or a spiritual master. Then gradually, one is elevated in devotional service, and it becomes automatic and spontaneous. The eagerness to serve Krishna comes naturally. When we talk about rasas, mellows, feelings, there are 12 kinds of rasas which are explained in the Nectar of Devotion. Srila Prabhupada explains 5 primary rasas that we can live eternally in full knowledge and bliss. These are 5 primary rasas in which we can exist. Let's go back to the book and look at a chapter called Boundless Love. This tells us more about Nectar of Devotion and how this process that is being explained in the Nectar of Devotion is very, very effective. It talks about how when we do this process, as it was explained, when everything belongs to Krishna, if we take care of Krishna, everything is taken care of. In the same way, it talks about how watering everything and not watering the root makes us very ineffective. But when we water the root of the plant, and all the branches, stems, trees, leaves, everything gets watered. So let's go to Boundless Love. Right there. Yes. Our loving propensity expands like a vibration of light or air expands, but we do not know where it ends. The Nectar of Devotion teaches us the science of loving every one of the living entities perfectly by the easy method of loving Krishna. We have failed to create peace and harmony in human society, even by such great attempts as the United Nations, because we did not know the right method. The method is very simple, but one has to understand it with a cool head. The Nectar of Devotion teaches all men how to perform the simple and natural method of loving Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If we learn how to love Krishna, then it's very easy to immediately and simultaneously love every living being. It's like pouring water at the root of a tree or supplying food to one's stomach. The method of pouring water at the root of the tree or supplying food is universally scientific and practical, as every one of us has experienced. Everyone knows when we eat something or when we put food in the stomach, the energy created by such an action is immediately distributed throughout the body. Similarly, when we pour water at the root, the tree part by part, similarly, when we pour water on the root, the energy created is immediately distributed throughout the entirety of the entire large tree. It's not possible to water the tree part by part. It's not possible to feed the body part by part. This is one very nice example that we use to talk about Bhakti-Yoga and explain why this affection for the Lord is all-encompassing. When we connect with the Lord emotionally, when we recognize our eternal affection and our position in servitude as natural servers of the Lord, then by doing that service with love and care, everything around us, all the relationships that we have, and the life that we've built will all balance out very nicely, because that love will compensate and enable us in all other parts of our life. As far as material necessities are concerned, the human civilization at the present moment is very advanced. We're so advanced, we live very comfortably, but Srila Prabhupada says, we're not very happy because we are missing the point. Material comforts of life alone are not enough to make us happy. The root cause of dissatisfaction is our dormant loving propensity. It has not been fulfilled despite our great achievements and advancements in material life. The Nectar of Devotion gives us practical hints how we can live in this world, perfectly engage in devotional service, and fulfill our desires in this life. It doesn't condone any materialistic way of life. It just attempts to give us information. So Prabhupada is explaining that it's telling us that one may live without material discomfort, but at the same time, one should learn the art of loving Krishna. At the present moment, we are investing so much into utilizing our propensity to love, but we are loving all the wrong things. We're watering all the parts of the tree, but missing the root. We're trying to keep our body fit by all means, but we neglect to supply food to the stomach. Missing Krishna means missing one's self also. Real self-realization and realization of Krishna go together simultaneously. Seeing oneself in the morning means seeing the sunrise also. Without seeing the sunshine, no one can see himself. What a nice analogy. Similarly, one has realized Krishna, then there's no question of self-realization. That is such a nice way to explain that. That if you are seeing yourself in the morning, you're also seeing the sunrise. It's a part of the deal. Well, having listened to all this input from the Nectar of Devotion, we get a deeper understanding of how important it is for us to find that connection with the Supreme Lord and make it happen. Take to the process of devotional service. Now let's understand, what is devotional service? Pure devotional service defined. That's the next chapter. Prabhupada says, first-class devotional service is known by one's tendency to be fully engaged in Krishna consciousness, serving the Lord favorably. The purport is that one may also be in Krishna consciousness unfavorably, but that cannot be counted as pure devotional service. Pure devotional service should be free from the desire for material benefit, sense gratification, both, as these desires are cultivated through fruitive activities and philosophical speculation. So Prabhupada is explaining that when you take to pure devotional service, you should not come in with any other expectations. It is just to please the Lord. If you're coming in trying to get something out of the deal, what's in it for me? What can I get? It doesn't work. And you don't qualify for that exceptionally deep love that you're looking for. You don't get that eternal rasa that all of us have come to want and expect in our lives. Pure devotional service should be free from those desires that contaminate it. Material benefits, any kind of sense gratification, and that comes from any fruitive activities that we're trying to cultivate, and also avoid any philosophical speculation. We're not going to go into that when we want to serve the Lord. Acting for Krishna is done in the best form when we work in devotional service. Prabhupada explains that devotional service is a sort of cultivation. The particular word used by Srila Rupa Goswami in this connection is Anushilanam. All the activities that we do can be divided into two classes. Rupa Goswami explains one is pravritti, the other is nivritti, positive and negative action. One category or class is kind of actions that we do to achieve a certain goal, and the other category is the things that we avoid doing. We do it to avoid unfavorable circumstances. Those who are cultivating spiritual life and executing devotional service are always engaged in some kind of activity. Devotional service is not a quiet, complacent, switched off kind of thing. We're always active, we're always engaged, and we're cultivating something. So Prabhupada breaks down the activities. He says there are two kinds of activities. One kind of activity that we would do in the process of developing this love is the activity of the mind. The other kind of activity that we do are the actual activities of the body. He explains it further. He tells us thinking, feeling, willing. These are all activities of the mind. When we do something, the activity becomes manifest by the gross bodily senses. Thus, in our mental activities, we should always try to think of Krishna and how we should please him. Following the footsteps of the acharyas and the spiritual master, these are the activities of the body. These are the activities of the body, mind, and activities of speech. So here we think. We think, we remember, we recollect. How about physically with the body? Physically, too, we can have for many services with our body. With our tongue, we have the activity of speech. We can speak of the glories of the Lord. We can also engage in preaching. This is called kirtan. With the body, the physical activities that can be done have to be connected in relation to Krishna. How do we connect our activities in relation to Krishna? How do we know when we're thinking of Krishna, we're thinking of pastimes, we're doing by our word of speech, we're preaching, that's more understandable. But when I physically want to do some work, how do I know that it's falling into the right category? And Srila Prabhupada explains that this relationship is established. This relationship of the activity connecting with Krishna is established by connecting oneself to a bona fide spiritual master, who is a direct representative of Krishna in his disciplic succession. Therefore, the execution of Krishna conscious activities with the body should be directed by a spiritual master. I need a guide. It's just not enough if I just sit there and think. I also want to physically act. And how do I know how I should act and what I should do? That is guided by a guru, a spiritual master. Therefore, the execution of Krishna conscious activities with the body should be directed by a spiritual master. And then, once you're directed, performed with faith. Have faith, have trust, and perform them. In this combination, we can do those activities that help us develop this love for Lord. This cultivation that we're doing in devotional service, this cultivation is a spiritual energy. Prabhupada explains there are three types of energies. There's the external energy, the internal energy, and the marginal energy, tatastha shakti. When they engage in activities under the internal spiritual energy, these activities that are engaged in are called Krishna conscious activities. This means that those who are great souls, great devotees, they don't act under the spell of material leisure. They act instead under the protection of spiritual energy. Any activities done in devotional service or Krishna consciousness are directly under the control of the spiritual energy. If we want to do an activity that will get us closer to the Lord, get us a deeper understanding of our affection for the Lord, and develop this, we need to make sure that they are spiritual activities. Energy is a sort of strength, says Srila Prabhupada. This strength can be spiritualized by the mercy of both the bona fide spiritual master and Krishna. So our energy is our strength. We want to make it spiritual. The effort that we put in has to become spiritual. And that is only possible if we get the mercy of the Lord. And the mercy of the Lord, in a way, manifests through the mercy of the spiritual master. A spiritual master is a pure devotee of the Lord. How do we know who is a pure devotee? How do we know who is a spiritual master? Prabhupada goes to that next. He says, let's read definition of a pure devotee. So let's get there. Let's open to definition of a pure devotee and see. It's a small little definition, it's not too big. But rather than copy paste it, I thought let's just look at it and see what Prabhupada has to say. The definition of a pure devotee as given by Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Samrita Sindhu can be summarized thus. A pure devotee, his service is favorable and is always in relation to Krishna. In order to keep the purity of such Krishna conscious activities, one must be freed from all material desires and philosophical speculation. So basically, he must be involved in doing service that is pure devotional service. A pure devotee always does pure devotional service. Any desire, except for the service of the Lord, is called material desire. Any desire, except for the service of the Lord, is called material desire. And philosophical speculation refers to the sort of speculation which ultimately arrives at the conclusion of voidism or impersonalism. To consider that either there is no God or it's just not a personal being with a form, a defined form, all these conclusions are useless for a Krishna conscious person, says Srila Prabhupada. Only very rarely by philosophical speculation can one get to the conclusion of worshipping Vasudeva or Krishna. This is confirmed by the Bhagavad Gita itself. The ultimate end of any philosophical speculation should be Krishna, with the understanding that Krishna is everything, cause of all causes, and one should surrender unto him. If this ultimate goal is reached, then philosophical advancement is favorable. But if the conclusion is voidism or impersonalism, that is not bhakti. Can we scroll up? Karma or fruitive activities is sometimes understood to consist of ritualistic activities. There are many people who are very attracted to ritualistic activities in the Vedas. But if one is simply attracted to ritualistic activities without understanding Krishna, his activities become unfavorable. Krishna consciousness can be based simply on hearing about Krishna, chanting about him, remembering him, etc. The Srimad Bhagavatam defines 9 processes. Besides those, everything else done is unfavorable in Krishna consciousness. Sri Rupa Goswami quotes from the Narada Pancharatra. He says, one should be free from all material designations. He should be cleansed of material contamination. He should be restored to his pure identity, in which he engages his senses in the service of the proprietor of the senses. So this is how he's defining a person who's a pure devotee. As long as one identifies himself as belonging to a certain family, society, nation, he is considered to be covered with designations. When one is fully aware he does not belong to any family, society, or country, but he is eternally related to Krishna, he then realizes that his energy, should be employed not in the interests of so-called family, society, but in Krishna. This purity of purpose and platform of pure devotional service, this is where a pure devotee stands. So let's recap. We've gone from just trying to understand what is love, what kind of love works for me, the spirit soul. Where can I find that kind of love? And then we went on to understand from the book, The Nectar of Devotion, what is the process by which I can kindle that love. I can recharge, reinvest in that supreme love. And then we covered the Nectar of Devotion, and the Nectar of Devotion explained to us how is it that we should choose the way we function. How are our activities in Krishna consciousness supposed to be? How do we think? How do we speak? And how do we behave? And in the process of explaining that, Nectar of Devotion explains to us that we need a spiritual master, a guide that takes us through this journey. So we all want to love someone. We feel incomplete without that eternal love. That someone is Krishna. So now we want to see Krishna, because now we've realized, oh, he's the person we really want to connect with. But we cannot, because we need to purify our senses and take to the process of devotional service. Once we take to this process of devotional service and follow the instructions to make sure that the services that we are doing are spiritual in nature and not material, over time our senses will be purified. Purified senses allow us to taste the mellow of that relationship, the bhakti rasa. And once we start tasting that mellow, once we get to the point where we're pure enough to taste that mellow is eternal. It will stay. And Srila Prabhupada explains that by serving Krishna, we are serving everything, because everything belongs to Krishna, watering the root of the tree. Rupa Goswami goes on to give us 6 unique features of pure devotional service. This is the last chapter in this book. It gives us 6 unique features of pure devotional service. And in that, we have quite a detailed explanation of each feature. The first point that he's giving us is pure devotional service brings immediate relief from all kinds of material distress. Who is not distressed in this world? So many problems. One ends and another begins. It seems as if we signed up for this and it's a never-ending, never-ending flow of problems. That is why Prabhupada calls it Dukkhalayam Ashashvatam. It's an impermanent world and it's full of pain, full of unhappiness. But devotional service can give us a relief. It gives us immediate relief. The Lord says that one should surrender unto Him, giving up all other engagements. Bhagavad Gita 18:66. The Lord also tells us, when you do that, when you surrender and give up, He will protect. He protects all surrendered souls from the reactions of all sinful activities. Am I suffering because of my sinful activities? What kind of sinful activities did I do? I'm such a nice person. I can't believe I did anything wrong. Well, when we think about it, it's not just this lifetime that we're taking into account. There's a lot of stuff we've done before, a lot of stuff we've done without understanding what was going on. A lot of times our ignorance leads us to pathways that we shouldn't have been on and activities that we shouldn't have done. Prabhupada explains sinful activities as 2 different kinds: those that have matured and those that have not. Srila Prabhupada says the sinful activities for which we are suffering at the present moment are those that have matured. When we commit an activity, it doesn't immediately cause trouble. There's a period of time where it fructifies. It starts as a seed and grows. And once a plant is fully bloomed, it's an analogy, but once a plant is fully bloomed, then we suffer the consequences of the mistakes we've made. What we're suffering now are the mistakes and sins that are actually at full capacity. We are at a point where it has come to fruition and we have to suffer the effects. But there are other activities that have not come up yet. So we do carry a load of stuff we've not actually cleared up. There are many results of past sinful activities for which we are suffering at the present moment, and we may be suffering in the future due to our present sinful activities. But all of these reactions to sinful deeds can be immediately stopped when we take to Krishna consciousness. Really? Srimad Bhagavatam 11:14-19 says, in this, Lord Krishna is instructing Uddhava, and he says, "My dear Uddhava, devotional service unto me is just like a blazing fire that can burn into ashes unlimited fuel supplied to it. This purport is that as the blazing fire can burn any amount of fuel to ashes, devotional service to the Lord can also burn up all the fuel of sinful activities. One who is engaged in Krishna's service, in Krishna consciousness, and devotional service has without doubt been freed from all contaminations of material sinful activities. Devotional service, therefore, has the power to nullify all kinds of reactions from sinful deeds. A devotee is nevertheless always alert not to commit any sinful activities. And this is a specific qualification as a devotee. Just because my doing devotional service, the Lord is taking his commitment to cleanse me, doesn't mean that I keep adding to the rubbish I've already loaded up. As a devotee, it's my requirement that I be alert not to commit any more sinful activities. Be more aware of my interactions with the material world. Be more aware of what the consequences are for these behaviors. Srimad Bhagavatam states that by performing devotional service, a person who is born in a very low family, even like dog eaters, may become eligible to take part in the performance of ritualistic ceremonies recommended in the Vedas. So it really raises your level. By performing Vedic ritualistic activities, giving money in charity, undergoing austerity, doing all these things, one can be temporarily free from the reaction of certain sinful activities. But at the next moment, one must again become engaged in sinful activities. So, what is the real benefit, says Srila Prabhupada? Because our propensities don't change. The things I like to do that got me into trouble don't stop. Just because I've made a change or I've suffered a penalty and I come out and I've paid my dues doesn't mean that my taste for those activities have gone away. The taste remains, and therefore I will be compelled to go back and do the same mistakes again. But in Krishna consciousness, you are actually purifying your senses. You're cleaning yourself up as you go. So these desires also start to go away. You do not have the tendency to go back and repeat it again and again. So he says, why do these Vedic ritualistic activities that only help clean out the sin, but don't help prevent you from doing it again? Why would we go that way, says Srila Prabhupada? Another example given in the Srimad Bhagavatam talks about the elephant who enters the lake, takes a bath very seriously. He cleanses his body thoroughly, very nicely, and then as soon as he comes onto the shore, he again picks up some dust and throws it over his body. Srila Prabhupada says such a person who is not trained in Krishna consciousness, who doesn't understand, cannot be completely freed from the desire for sinful activities. Another example he gives is the fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 4:22-39. Sanat Kumar is saying, "My dear king, the false ego of a human being is so strong, it keeps him in material existence as if tied up by strong ropes. Only a devotee can cut off the knot of this strong rope very easily by engaging in Krishna consciousness. Others who are not in Krishna consciousness, by trying to become great mystics, great ritualistic performers, cannot advance like devotees. Therefore, it is the duty of everyone to engage himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness in order to be freed from the tight knot of false ego and engagement in material activities." Basically, it just means that when we take to Krishna consciousness, we're cleaned inside out. Not only do we get relief from the suffering of the mistakes of the past and the present, we also get the strength to overcome the desire to keep committing those mistakes in the future. When the deal is this good, who wouldn't take it? Let's look at Krishna's promise. That is one part of the book that I really like. As you go through this and you cover the last part, Prabhupada has given very, very nice, small little snippets that really connect. One is Krishna's promise. Everyone in the material world is full of anxieties. That is the nature of material existence. One after another, problems come. So if someone would promise us, just depend on me, I'll solve all your problems, how much relief would you feel? Just imagine. Don't worry, I've taken charge of all your affairs. We may doubt his ability to do so because we know his limitations, but Krishna says, I will take care of you. Then we should have full faith in his words. Krishna is not an ordinary man. He is the supreme personality of Godhead. He is Yogeshwar, the master of all mystic power. He is the absolute truth. And when he promises, give up all activities, give up all attempts to solve your problems, and just surrender. I will take charge and nullify your sins. We should feel assured that we will be delivered from the reactions of our sinful activities. Let's look at the second point. Pure devotional service is the beginning of all auspiciousness. Actually, auspiciousness means welfare activities for all people of the world. When we see things as how they relate only to us, our family, our children, our brethren, just our country, when we see things as only related to us, it's not really auspicious. Auspicious is when everybody is benefited. Srila Prabhupada explains, at the present moment, groups of people are engaged in welfare activities in terms of society, community, nation. There's even a great attempt to form the United Nations. But due to the shortcomings of limited national activities, such general mass welfare programs are not practically possible. The Krishna conscious movement, however, is so nice that it can render the highest benefit to the entire human race. Everyone can be attracted by this movement and everyone can feel the result. Prabhupada puts in a small snippet called The End of All Suffering. Let's hear what he has to say. He says, we suffer because of our sinful activities. We enjoy because of our pious activities. It's like a scale. If we've made mistakes, we pay for it. If we've done good deeds, we benefit from it. But in this material world, whether we enjoy or suffer, the common factor is always suffering. Suppose in my next life I get a good birth due to pious activities in this life. I may have sufficient wealth and education, a physical beauty. But even if I'm born in the family of a rich man, the sufferings of taking birth will be the same as a child born in a poor family. Similarly, when there's some disease, like a fever, for example, do I suffer less than a rich man or a poor man? The pain is the same. Therefore, as long as it's material existence, there is always suffering and enjoyment will remain. This suffering and enjoyment will remain on the same level, ultimately painful. Srila Prabhupada is asking us to think about this. He says, so you have enough money, you're not short of anything, you're well off, you don't have too many problems. So you think that you're benefiting. But if you look at the four basic problems of life, which is birth, old age, disease, and death, when you look at the four basic fundamental problems, they are the same. Whether you are young or old, whether you are beautiful, whether you have money, whether you have power, none of this affects, because everybody has to be born, everybody has to suffer the birth, everybody has to suffer old age, everybody has to suffer disease, and everybody eventually dies. So in what way is in what way are all your happiness, your benefits, actual benefits? Prabhupada asking. They're all sufferings too, because the underlying suffering for everybody is the same. This world, this material world, is nothing but suffering. But Krishna says, if you take to his service, I will free you from all sins and suffering. Now, this is real auspiciousness. When Krishna takes charge, he educates us from within and without. Just as we read in the beginning, he cleanses us within and without. And when he does that, he does it so we may go back home, back to Godhead. From the material point of view, it's auspicious, having wealth, education, beauty, high parentage, and so on. But everything is adulterated with so much suffering. Therefore, they are not actually auspicious. Real auspiciousness is to go back home, back to Godhead, says Srila Prabhupada, getting an eternal life of bliss and knowledge. That is auspiciousness. And that can be achieved only by engagement in pure devotional service, without material motive or philosophical speculation. And to achieve those rules and to achieve that, we follow the rules and regulations. We chant Hare Krishna daily and engage in the service of the Lord. What's the third quality of devotional service? Let's see. Pure devotional service. Let's see, what did we cover first? First point on pure devotional service was it gives us immediate relief. All our material distresses, immediate relief. The second thing, it's auspicious. It's actually the most auspicious thing. Third, pure devotional service automatically puts one in transcendental pleasure. He's talking about happiness. Srila Rupa Goswami categorizes happiness into three categories. You can get happiness from material enjoyment. You can get happiness by identifying yourself with the Supreme, one with the Supreme, Brahman happiness. Third is Krishna conscious happiness. Happiness derived from pure devotional service is the highest because it is eternal. The happiness derived from material perfection or from understanding oneself to be Brahman is inferior because these are temporary. There is no preventing one's fall down from material happiness. And there's every chance of fall down when one is identifying oneself with the impersonal Brahman. It has been seen that great Mayavadi sannyasis, very educated and almost realized souls, sometimes take to political activities or social welfare activities. Why is that? The reason is that they actually do not derive any ultimate transcendental happiness in the impersonal understanding and therefore must come down to the material platform and take such mundane activities. So near yet so far. So Prabhupada says, pure devotional service immediately gets you to the transcendental plane. You don't have to do, the happiness that you get from material items is temporary and very limited. And if you try to go through Brahman, you're going to slip and fall. Eventually you're never going to make it. It's a dead end road. You're going to go there and then U-turn and come back. This is why don't you stick to Krishna consciousness? The fourth point for pure devotional service is that it is rarely achieved. Oh, so long we've been saying this is the best thing, you should take to it, you should do it, and then pure devotional service is rare. Does it mean I'm not going to get it? Well, let's see what Prabhupada is trying to tell us. He says, in the preliminary phase of spiritual life, there are different kinds of austerities, penances, processes for attaining self-realization. However, just by executing these processes without any material desire, a person cannot achieve devotional service. Aspiring by oneself alone to achieve devotional service is not very hopeful because Krishna does not agree to award devotional service to merely anyone. Krishna is picky about giving you devotional service. Krishna can easily give you material happiness. He'll easily give you even liberation. But he will not agree very easily to give a person engagement in his devotional service. Devotional service can in fact be attained only through the mercy of a pure devotee. In Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 19:151, it is said, by the mercy of the spiritual master, who is a pure devotee, and by the mercy of Krishna, one can achieve the platform of devotional service. There is no other way. We need Guru. He is the key that opens the lock. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Prahlad Maharaj also confirms, merely by personal efforts or by the instruction of higher authorities, one cannot attain to the stage of devotional service. One must become blessed by the dust of the lotus feet of a pure devotee, who is completely free from the contamination of material desires. That is the way to attain devotional service. So, does it mean we won't get devotional service? No. Prabhupada is explaining why having a spiritual master is extremely important. Because without the blessings and the guidance of a pure devotee, it is very difficult for Krishna to give you devotional service. You need to qualify yourself. And he is the right guide on this journey. Without him, there's no way to get there. Those in pure devotional service, point 5, deride even the conception of liberation, Brahmananda. The happiness of becoming one with the Supreme, multiplied 1 trillion-fold, still cannot compare to the atomic fraction of happiness derived from an ocean of devotional service. What does that mean? It means not a chance. It's not worth it. Don't even try. Pure devotional service is way more better than anything else that they can be offering you. Any sense of liberation other than pure devotional service in that format isn't worth considering. 6. Pure devotional service is the only means to attract Krishna. Why? Devotional service attracts even Krishna. Krishna, all attractive, that's his name, attracts everyone. But devotional service attracts Krishna. This means that pure devotional service is even transcendently stronger than Krishna himself because it is Krishna's internal potency. What does that mean? It brings us to the concept of a wonderful person called Radharani. The symbol of devotional service in the highest degree is Srimati Radharani. Krishna is called Madana Mohana, which means he is so attractive that he can defeat the attraction of thousands of cupids. But Radharani is still more attractive. Because she can attract Krishna. Therefore, devotees call her Madana Mohana Mohini, the attractor of Cupid. For us to perform devotional service means to follow in the footsteps of Srimati Radharani, and the devotees in Vrindavan put themselves under her care to achieve perfection in their devotional service. Devotional service is not an activity of the material world. Like we discussed, it's transcendental. It's directly under the control of Srimati Radharani. So being directly under the control of the internal potency of Krishna, devotional service, if we get it through the mercy of Guru and Krishna, if we get to perform it, if we get to cleanse our senses, we get to that level where we can taste the rasa eternally, if we get there, then devotional service attracts even Krishna himself. Krishna in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam 11, 14, 20 says, My dear Uddhava, you may know it from me that the attraction I feel for devotional service rendered by my devotees is not to be attained even by performing mystic yoga, philosophical speculation, ritualistic sacrifices, study of Vedanta, practice of severe austerities, or the giving of everything in charity. These are, of course, nice activities, but they are not as attractive to me as the transcendental loving service rendered by my devotees. Another example is given by Narada Muni in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. He says, there Narada talks to King Yudhishthira, while the king is appreciating the glories of the character of Prahlad Maharaj. A devotee always appreciates the activities of other devotees. Yudhishthira Maharaj was appreciating the qualities of Prahlad, and that appreciation is one symptom of a pure devotee. A pure devotee never thinks himself great. He always thinks that other devotees are greater than him. The king was thinking, Prahlad Maharaj is the actual devotee of the Lord. I am nothing. And while thinking this, he was addressed by Narada as follows. My dear Yudhishthira, you are the only fortunate person in this world, you Pandavas. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has appeared on this planet and is presenting himself to you as an ordinary human being. He is always with you in all circumstances. He is living with you and covering himself from the eyes of others. Others cannot understand that he is a Supreme Lord, but he is still living with you as your cousin, your friend, and even your messenger. Therefore, you must know that nobody in this world is more fortunate than you. It's so important. God is great, but devotional service is greater than God because it attracts even him. People who are not in devotional service cannot understand what great value there is in rendering service to the Lord, says Srila Prabhupada. So we talked about Bhakti-Yoga, the art of eternal love. And in this, we try to understand, why do we want this love? Why is it so important to us? And how is it so valuable in our processes? How is it that by achieving this missing ingredient, we can make our lives more satisfying and eternally blissful, and find our way eventually back home, back to Godhead? There were a few pieces of writing from Srila Prabhupada's book that I really liked and I'd saved to read for you. One, which again comes in the same thing, it comes in part 3, Krishna consciousness produces supreme happiness. And Prabhupada beautifully explains, what is happiness in the material world? What are you guys looking for? He says, the modern scientists have manufactured nuclear weapons with which they can destroy an insignificant part of this planet. But the yoga siddhi known as Ishita, one can destroy an entire planet simply at will. Another perfection is Vashita, and by this perfection, one can bring someone else under his control. This is a kind of hypnotism, and it's irresistible. Sometimes it's found that a yogi who may have attained a little perfection with this mystic power comes out among people and speaks all sorts of nonsense and controls their mind and exploits them and gets away. There's so many mystic perfections like this. Simply by his will, a person can perform wonderful acts of mysticism. The highest perfection of mystic power is Kama Vashishtya. This is also magic. But whereas the Prakamya power acts to create wonderful effects with the scope of nature, Kamishta permits one to contradict nature. So you work in a way that contradicts nature itself. All these siddhis are available, but none of this is superior to devotional service. Prabhupada says happiness from non-devotional yoga is inferior. The mystic perfections that I've talked about, achieved by actually successful yogis, they are 8 in number. But none of this can equal or appeal to a person who is taken to devotional service. He says material happiness that everybody's hankering for is so temporary. Foolishly, people who are enamored of the glitter of modern materialistic advancement are thinking that Krishna conscious movement is for less intelligent people. They think I'm better off being busy with my material comfort, maintaining a nice apartment, having a big family, and having my sex life. These people do not know that at any moment they can be kicked out of their material situation. Due to ignorance, they do not know that the real life is eternal. The temporary comforts of the body are not the goals of our life. And it is due only to the darkest ignorance that people become enamored of the glimmering advancement of material comforts. Bhaktivinoda Thakur therefore says that the advancement of material knowledge renders a person more foolish because it causes one to forget his real identity by its glitter. This is doom for him, because this human form of life is meant for getting out of material contamination. But these advancements of material knowledge, people are becoming more and more entangled in material existence. They have no hope of being liberated from this catastrophe. He goes on to say, reject this dream of material happiness. We are enamored by the glitter of this material world, just like moths are attracted to fire, to a flame. Moths enter with great speed into the fire without knowing that they are about to die. They forcefully enter into the fire that is meant surely for death. Similarly, modern science has created so many so-called comforts of life, temporary enjoyments, but at the same time, we take the risk of so many dangerous conditions. Our attempts to mitigate discomfort are like the attempts of a laborer who tries to get some relief while carrying a heavy load, shifting it from one shoulder to another. This does not eliminate the difficulty of carrying the burden. Similarly, we are trying to get material comfort by producing so many scientific inventions, but they do not actually give us happiness. We are simply changing the position of our burden. For instance, in America, people have to accept so much danger just to drive in their motor cars. They may try to increase their happiness by improving transportation, but they are just shifting the burden around. They therefore create more and more problems. They have so many cars that they have to construct more roads and highways, one on top of another. Still, they experience traffic congestion, accidents, pollution, and discomfort. This is a vain endeavor, says Srila Prabhupada. The scientists think they are solving the problems of life, but the discomforts of life are still there. And the scientists must fail because this material world is by nature full of discomfort. Krishna confirms in the Bhagavad Gita, Dukhalayam Ashashvatam. How then can you make it a happy place? We may dream of something dangerous, a tiger or a snake. Then we want to change it to another dream. Similarly, our attempt to become happy in this material world by manufacturing some artificial means of happiness is simply a useless dream. Real happiness is to take shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna. Who could have said it better than this? And Srila Prabhupada has this deep understanding because of his life and his interactions of connecting our day-to-day situations to the concept that he's trying to explain. This is one of Prabhupada's many little gems, Bhakti-Yoga, the Art of Eternal Love. And I do recommend this as a great gift to any friend who's seeking love, who's looking for attachment in all the wrong places. One little thing I noticed at the end of the book that I wasn't aware is that there's a write-up by His Grace Mahatma Das. And I wasn't aware of that till I opened the book. It's Bhakti-Yoga at Home. So we have a final chapter in this book that is Bhakti-Yoga at Home. And this is written by His Grace Mahatma Das Prabhu. And he has covered the topics that are related to the basic concepts of Krishna conscious life. He covers chanting, how to hold your beads, how to chant on the beads. He covers setting up an altar in your home, how to cook and prepare spiritual food, how to make an offering, prayers connected to those offerings. And then he goes on to explain the 4 regulative principles and their effect on your life. And he goes on to talk about 2 subtopics. One is the need to read scriptures and how important they are, and having the association of devotees. And he talks about what kind of service should one take up. When we look at this book, I am compelled to say that this book it's a real complete book. Why do I feel like it's a complete book? It's a complete book because 1, it tells us what is love and why are we seeking it. 2, it tells us whom we should love, who is the focus of all that affection. 3, it tells us how to love and how to get to that place of loving service where we can eternally serve. And 4, it introduces us to daily Krishna conscious activities if we're interested in doing more than just reading a book. It takes us to the next step. So in that way, this is a complete book. I'm very happy to have this opportunity to share this book with you. And I hope that at any time in the future, you will also get a chance to read this book and try it out. With that, I will stop. If anybody has any questions, anything to share, please let me know. Or if there's any other book that you feel would be good to cover, that's great too. Did you want me to cover anything else from this? I can pull out a few notes if necessary. Hi,
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Hare Bol Mataji. I was really relishing your reading, and it is so nice that you are taking that small books and your threadbare you're reading. That's very nice. It was actually very inspiring, and at the end you made us aware. I was really not aware that that Bhakti book at the end there is a Mahatma Prabhu's that's really very very interesting because
I wasn't aware, Prabhu. So it's for me. I'm actually the real benefiter of taking a class like this, because a lot of times in book distribution we don't realize the value of the small book. When we're doing goals and we're doing book distribution, I used to wonder that this book has an image of Krishna in the front, and it's very traditional. So I used to think we should give a book that's not so traditional, so that anybody would accept it. I don't think the same way anymore, because I know what he's talking about. And I can understand why, these are all expressions of love. And for a person like us in today's world who's seeking love, these images make so much more sense. Uh, it, I also felt like as book distributors, we need to know what we're giving out. Srila Prabhupada, I remember Vaisheshika Maharaj always reminds us that one of Prabhupada's instructions to him was you should also read the books, not just distribute them. And I felt like this is one way for all of us to get that done, and follow his instruction. Is there any part of the book that you liked, Prabhu? Anything that stood out to you?
yes, definitely. I think I really was liking the portion where you are explaining that what is real love and how even as a family person one can practice uh, and those are some of the points that you are mentioning because in this world most of the people they have this problem of emptiness. They feel they're not understood or everybody is carrying a heaviness of emptiness although it should be light but it's actually quite heavy. So everybody is carrying that, and that's a common problem with most of the people, and they have all the gadgets, not only they, it includes we also, at least me. So yeah, we are carrying all this, but there is a pinprick. We feel not satisfied, and to the extent we are not embracing this path of Krishna consciousness. To that extent, one feels something is missing, and then when this wonderful narration where you mentioned that it is about service, and by doing the service and we connect to the higher things like chanting, then we'll start to feel uh,
Flow.
the fullness, and once we have that satisfaction then we can distribute it. Otherwise uh, even on a spiritual path people can go on for some time with a empty show, but not for a long time one can carry on with that. One has to feel for themselves uh, the, the taste of the love actually, and the satisfaction from chanting. As Vaishik Maharaj loves to say that after every chanting you take one grain of that fulfillment, that satisfaction that you got the taste and strive for that taste. Yes, that was very much coming out in your reading because you're also practicing, you're also uh, you know uh, you're realizing that. So the words were really powerful, that how on the fundamental level we have to really feel satisfied, connecting with Krishna and practicing devotional service, and that is so important. This only can actually save the problem that the world is undergoing. Even many of us are undergoing. This is the only solution.
Srila Prabhupada explains to us that no matter how happy you are, you're unhappy. I like that part. Because we think that if we have a very healthy family and enough money in the bank and we own a house, we're settled a little bit, then we are having a good life. And then Prabhupada looks at us and says, really? Do you really think you're having a good life? And he's explaining to us how we really don't have a good deal here. And we need to recognize that as fast as possible. And it's very difficult because I think we are always oriented to looking towards what's in it for me. As long as I'm happy within this circumstance, it's great. And one of the problems with relationships these days that I notice is that if you're not Krishna conscious, then you're always looking for this one person who can make you happy. You're not looking for the one person whom you can make happy, or this one service that make everybody happy. The generosity of that gesture in itself, putting Krishna in the center and pleasing him, overcomes so many challenges in a marriage, in a relationship, in anything. Our brahmacharis are some of the happiest people in the world, and they're single. And when we say we're lonely, I feel like we've this whole society that we live in is focused on benefiting individuals. It's not really understanding the concept of watering the root and realizing how if we all connect together in serving Krishna, we see so much of the Lord in each other. We have a commonness, a common thread that removes this whole feeling of loneliness and brings in a deep sense of gratitude, a deep sense of gratitude that develops into happiness, happiness of the spiritual kind. Yeah. I'm so happy, Prabhu, that we were able to do this class. Hopefully, we'll be able to cover a few more books next time, and we will be able to follow this instruction of reading as well as distributing Prabhupada's books. I think we can stop here. Yeah? Okay. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyev cha patitanam
Prabhu had one comment actually.
Oh, yes, Prabhu.
Can you hear me, Madhuri?
Oh, yes.
Thank you, Madhuri, for the beautiful book and class. It was really nice, Madhuri.
Thank you for coming, Prabhu. You and Prabhu are like consistently here. Prem Kishori Mataji and both of you. I'm very impressed. I should turn up more often, I think. It's really nice of you to come and listen. Thank you, Prabhu.
I am the beneficiary, as you said, Madhuri, by coming. I always wanted to read these small books, but I could never read it. But now, because you are reading it, so I know now what are the contents of the book. I can understand it while I'm distributing it. I know what is in it. Also, you covered beyond birth and death, so that was also very nice, Madhuri. I have a request for easy journey to other planets, Madhuri.
We'll look into that next.
So that is I liked many things you said about love is the topic that we talk most often and understand the least. That is very nice, and that's how we can actually sell this book. That is
the first. I think it's the first line in the introduction. So much we don't notice.
Yeah.
The book sells itself.
Yeah.
The first line, it says, "Love is one of the words we use most and understand least."
Wow. So
it
nice.
got me. You had me at hello, so it was like perfect.
I also like that you said Prabhupada has said everything, but it's that we have to find it. So I always used to think people talk about pure devotee, but here there is a chapter which is titled "A Definition of Pure Devotee." You showed that this one chapter, so that was also very nice. Yes, Prabhupada has given everything, but if I read, then I will know that it is there. And many different points, but this is a very good starter for Nectar of Devotion also, in order to just understand what is Nectar of Devotion, and very good introduction to all the 6 topics.
It lets us know why we need Nectar of Devotion.
Right.
You're looking for love. You want love. You identify love. But there's a way to get to that love. And for that, you need the Nectar of Devotion. And that's what Prabhupada is saying. So if you've read this, the next book you want is the Nectar of Devotion.
Yeah. Thank you, Madhuri.
Thank you, Prabhu. Giridhar, you had a question?
Yes, Madhuri. Thank you so much, Madhuri. It's a really nice class. I've never had such long notes before.
Thank you.
I had a couple of questions actually, but one of them, like the statement in the beginning, really stood out. It was the impetus for service is the joy we derive from service because of the affection we bear for the recipient. So I was just thinking, like, it's the book is also like talking a lot about pure devotional service, and in some sense, like the joy we derive from service is maybe a motive. So that's what I was trying to understand. So how can we even conceive of pure devotion when we are so maybe selfish or cynical, at least.
Not really, Giridhar. Happiness is our birthright. We are Satchit Ananda. How can we not be attracted by happiness? It's our birthright. Krishna wants us to be happy. It's like a parent who sees the kid is lost and he knows that he'll be happier with me. The kid just fights and says, "No, I'm happy here. I want to be here." And a parent knows this is not going to work. A few hours later, you're going to start crying. Come home. We're like, no. And that's what we are. We are that little kid that absolutely refuses to go home and says, "I like this dirt. I like that broken toy. And I like this. Oh, that's very nice." And they keep moving forward. And Krishna's way. When we go towards devotional service and we are looking for that connection, that love, service with love gives us happiness. Happiness is our birthright. Why should we not look for eternal service that keeps us always happy? That is not a selfish thought. That's our right. That's where we need to go. And that's where our spiritual master is taking us. That's why Srila Prabhupada says, first, understand. Second, desire it. Third, make it happen. Find your guru. Because once you found out you're in the wrong place, and then you really want to go home, you need to find the guy who will take you home. So it's just a process. And then Prabhupada says, right, devotional service is transcendental. The moment you start devotional service, the happiness you're deriving from it is also transcendental. It's no longer in the material realm. You don't compare it to the selfish thought of, I want to be happy. As a materialistic person in a materialistic world, you're thinking of it as, I want to be happy. I am an eternal piece of the eternal supreme, and I am Satchit Ananda, and I wish to be happy, therefore I serve. And that is a completely different category. That's why Srila Prabhupada says, once you make it transcendental, it's no longer applicable to the material world. And by doing transcendental service, it builds and builds to a point where you can taste the rasa, the bhakti rasa. And that bhakti rasa, once you get to that point where you've cleaned your senses and you're getting to bhakti rasa, that bhakti rasa will be eternal. It will not be a joy that comes and goes. It will not be the chapala sukha. You seeking chapala sukha, yes, that would be wrong. But you're asking for bhakti rasa. And that's a perfectly legitimate process. So it's not the same.
Okay. But like, just to maybe clarify the context, I wanted to understand how something fits in. But specifically, I belong to the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, and like one thing that's mentioned is like about the Alvars, the 12 Alvars, who are basically founding saints. But what's described about them is that their devotion is so pure that they don't even want the joy of serving. They only want the pleasure of the Lord, and it's not even for themselves. So that's what I was thinking about. So I'm wondering how that's even conceivable.
Well, that's how even the gopis are, right? They don't care what happens to them as long as Krishna is happy. And we are in a process. Bhakti-Yoga is a process. We haven't achieved the end yet. We are looking for guru, which means, see, the guru is the pure devotee. The pure devotee is what you're talking about. The one who's at a point where he's just happy serving. He doesn't care what happens to himself. There's no personal need anymore. But I'm starting from point A, where I have a personal need. I want to be happy. I want to be loved, and I want to give love. And I am lost. And then I'm found. So we are here and they are there. And Prabhupada explains very nicely that in the journey from here to there, our devotional service will mellow. It will get better to a point where it becomes spontaneous and completely natural for us in whichever rasa we're in. And at that point, when it becomes spontaneous and natural, then the qualities of pure devotee arise. And then we don't care anymore. Prahlad came in with an opinion and motive. He came to pray. By the time he got to the Lord, it was all gone. He didn't even know why he was, Dhruva. He didn't even know why he was even thinking about these things. It was like that. For us, we're starting from A, we're trying to get to point B. But the Alvars, of course, are already there. There is great happiness in service. But the highest happiness is just in pure service. Otherwise, why would it be the first quality that it dispels all miseries? It dispels all miseries because we are miserable. if we were already there, we wouldn't be miserable at all. We wouldn't even think about our happiness because we're already happy. We do the one thing we always want to do, which is to serve the Lord. Does it help, Kirtha?
Yes, Mataji, yeah, that I got.
Kinda. I apologize for not making it more clear. But it's
No, Mataji, I got that. I've had that question for a long time.
Krishna consciousness is a process, and Vaisheshika Maharaj always reminds us that if you leave a lecture with more questions than you came in, then it's a good lecture. You go home with more questions than you came in. So I suppose Srila Prabhupada's book has done its job. Shall we stop here? If anyone else has any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll stop here. Okay. Thank you so much for coming and attending our Sunday Feast lecture. Hope to see you again. I think we'll meet you again Wednesday evening for our lecture. So till then, have a wonderful week. Hare Krishna.